The God that loves you. The God that's inside of you. The God that wants the best for you. The God that wants you to live the prosperous life that he promised his children. So let's see who else found favor with God. Now you all know the story about David and Golliath. You know, here's this little shepherd boy David who was faced with this big giant Golliath. And in the eyes of the world, he had no chance against Golliath. Here's this little itty bitty boy, and here's this giant Golliath. I mean, people were just looking at the outward appearance, and what they saw was not promising. They saw this little boy, they're like, oh my gosh, he's gonna go down right now. They're probably thinking in their heads. But what they didn't know is that David was a worshiper. Worship confuses the enemy. You need to remember that. Worship confuses the enemy. So here comes young little David, you know, I don't even know what he was thinking. He was probably so filled with in awe of what God was doing in that moment, and I've had those feelings before. And David comes to approach this giant, but David knew exactly who he was in Christ. Look at your neighbor and say, you need to know exactly who you are in Christ. 1 Samuel 17, verses 45 through 47. Then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with the sword, with the spear, and with the javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. You see, David, he knew his identity in Christ. He knew that it was not going to be anything that he did, but it was going to be everything that God did in him. And he wasn't afraid to tell him. He had the boldness of the Lord. You need to have that same boldness. You know, because there's a crazy world out there that will eat you alive if you're not ready to confront it. But David was also humble. See, because David, he knew that it wasn't all about him. That if he won this fight with Golliath, it wasn't so that David could get the glory. It wasn't so that everyone could say, hey, look at David, he's awesome. No, he says it clearly. He says that the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. Young person, you need to be humble. You need to understand that this is not about you. It is all about God, and that is all that matters.